Kremlin's claim of an assassination attempt on Russian President Vladimir Putin. This news has been grabbing headlines globally, and it's top of today's edition of Rush Hour as well. Big escalation, clearly, in the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, Kremlin is saying it was attacked by 2 drones last night, but President Putin of Russia is safe. Kyiv has been accused of trying to assassinate the Russian president, but Ukraine has denied any such attempt by the country, and Russia now says it reserves the right to take retaliatory measures wherever and whenever is deemed necessary. Let's find out more about what's the situation on the Russia-Ukraine war. This is the latest salvo, as it were, because Russia is making these claims, but have they given enough evidence for this? Let's connect with my colleague here at Times Network, Srinjoy, joining us on the phone line. Srinjoy, do tell us about the latest claims being made by Kremlin and what Ukraine has said in response.
Well, Russia says very clearly that, look, this was an assassination attempt. There were 2 armed UAVs which went all the way to the Kremlin from Ukraine, and that's a long distance, and they were shot down by Russian air defense. That's the Russian point, and we will take action, suitable action at a suitable time is what the Russians are saying. President Putin, meanwhile, is unhurt. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are not saying that. They have not said that they were responsible for the attack. All we know is that President Vladimir Zelensky has said that we are getting ready for a counter-offensive. That is, of course, what has been told to ET now and now as well by Ukraine. The important point is, what will Russia do now? Will it act in a similar way? Will it attack the presidential palace in Kyiv, for one? Will it increase missile strikes on on Ukrainian cities like Kharkov, like Kyiv? Or will it do a spoiling attack even before the counteroffensive of the Ukrainians begins? When this counteroffensive begins, we do not know. Where it will be, we do not know. But everyone is ready for it. That's very clear. The Russians have dug in, is what reports are. So all 3 things are possible. So are other things. The important thing is the Russians have said we will do what we will do at the right time. So we will have to wait and see what the Russians actually do.
We will wait and watch. Srinjoy, many thanks for joining us with the latest on the situation. And let's connect with former Ambassador Mr. Suresh Goel, joining us on this edition of Russia. Great to have you back with us, Mr. Goel. As far as my colleague is concerned, he's talking about the fear which is imminent that Russia will use this claim that Ukraine has tried to assassinate Putin to escalate the war against Ukraine. How likely is that?
I would say, given the normal circumstances, very likely, for the simple reason that if Russia does believe that the attack has come from Ukraine, it's not a question of right, wrong, whatever it is. It's a question of perception and the beliefs and the data they have. If it has actually come from Ukraine, and this will be an attack on the president's life, and they have termed it as a terrorist act, that actually opens the way for Russia to retaliate in whichever way they choose, and heavily if they choose to do so. With what effect is debatable, but it can do so. But I hope they don't, because if they do, it would basically mean a spiraling of the war, which could lead to actually unforeseen and rather horrible results involving practically the whole Europe into a war, which could lead to even the world war and a nuclear war. So, I mean, if we begin to think of the consequences, they are unimaginable and horrible. And I hope it doesn't happen, and that the sanity will prevail, and that even if the Russians do believe that it is because of what Ukraine did, that they will think of other possible retaliatory measures rather than escalating the war.
The truth remains, Mr. Goel, that at this point, details that are offered by Kremlin, as far as its claims of an attack by Kyiv, a drone attack as it were, those details, that kind of evidence is sketchy. In the light of that, how do you think the countries that are either supporting Kremlin or opposing it, how is the world going to view what Russia is claiming right now? Where do you think the world stands? Because as far as the West is concerned, that seems to be a house divided right now. Now with these claims,
Absolutely.
how is that likely to change?
Absolutely. I remember when I just joined the service, and there was a critical moment when we thought that the war is going to erupt, and we rushed into one of the senior officers' room, and who said, "Wait till after lunch. We'll see." And true to what he said, within 2 hours, the crisis had dissipated. So I'm an optimist. I'm basically quite sure that neither Putin nor Zelensky nor President Biden nor anyone in Europe would want to have a horrible war at their hand. And therefore, even if the data that or whatever Russians are producing, that overnight they will think with cooler minds and think of, as I said, other retaliatory measures if necessary, rather than escalating the war efforts. This is my hope. But again, we do not know how Putin might react. So let us wait and see and hope that the wiser counsel would prevail.
War is very central to Putin, Mr. Goel, as far as his domestic politics are concerned. How do you think this is likely to play out? This news, this kind of claim being made by Russia, as opposed to what people believed. There are those within Russia who stand in support of Putin, and there are those who stand against it as well. In terms of domestic politics in Russia, how far is this going to take Putin?
I think domestically, a kind of the news that Putin was under attack would actually strengthen his head. There would be a kind of a sympathy by the people for him that this is what he is now facing. But even if it is temporary, it is going to happen. But more than the domestic pressure or the domestic politics, what is more important really here is the European politics. Because when the tensions grow, the economy is going to nosedive. Russia is going to need more money. They will be in a rush to sell more oil. They will need more revenues in the reserves. The oil is going to nosedive. There will be pressure on the currencies of the other countries. There are so many horrific consequences of what could happen. And therefore, all I can say is that it's not the domestic Russia that I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of how Russia as a former superpower, and which is still a major military power, how Russia is going to react in Europe and globally. And that is what actually is boggling my mind at the moment. If they do really go the way of a kind of a shocking retaliation.
How much do you think Ukraine has factored in how Russia is going to retaliate? This is Zelensky's war as much as it's Putin's. From the Ukrainian war effort, how prepared are they going to be now for any kind of sustained attack or an escalated attack from the Russian side?
They will be very prepared. But for their preparation, they will need material support from European countries, even more than what they are now getting, even more beyond the Leopard tanks and they've requested for the aircraft, which is yet to come really. So they are going to be very well prepared, but even when they are prepared, would other European countries also plunge into this thing? That is a question, because any Russian attack on Ukraine, even if it is not a NATO country, will bring Russia even closer. And I mean, I know that Russia has not done very well in the war effort, but when they actually bring in more troops, more tanks, more aircraft, then will Europe keep their hands away? So Russia will do it, of course, but Ukraine will need Europe to be behind it. Ukraine will need USA and Europe to even make more effort. Will they do so? So there are so many imponderables really in this game.
So whether that support is going to be forthcoming from the European side, from the West side, that remains to be seen. And of course, it's a developing story. We'll see exactly how Russia plans its retaliation if and when that happens. But like you said, remain optimistic. For your Optimism and for your perspective. Mr. Goel, thank you indeed for joining us on this edition of Rush Hour.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.